where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
A big, powerful America, and shoot them for what?
On that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.
With the last words on my lips, that I am a revolutionary, and you're going to have to keep on saying that.
The Foundry Community Land Trust. This is going to be kind of a quick walkthrough of the actual, the document or the presentation here, and there's a lot that goes into it, but I think this is concise enough to put out there for everyone. But if you're involved in any aspect, in terms of you have a deeper understanding of any one particular aspect, I'd welcome conversation, reach out, make a comment, and also be sure to like the video. This community land trust, this concept here, is following the ideology that I've really been thinking about and really trying to understand, because I've noticed, I think, as a child, I had a lot of passion and drive to change the world, but I was severely limited in the connections that were kind of made available, even, through, whether we're talking about just through the school system, whether we're talking about through, just general available jobs or opportunities or mentorships or whatever. And this idea of a community land trust, this is to where people are able to, the biggest thing about this idea of what I want to do with the Foundry, period, is connect the people that are passionate to change the world around them, right? That's the basis here, right? And to take the idea of, and that is the baseline, right? The bare minimum of what this society should be doing. Connecting people who are passionate and allowing them to change the world around them, right? This society, particularly in America, it's supposed to be an experiment. The rich aren't, they're not good. They're not competent. They're not, they're not the best of us. Okay, they're just people who are phenomenal at simply just looking the other way. Okay, and I'm not going to get on a rant about that, but the idea is we have to start to connect people who are passionate and want to change the world and make it a better place, and help them and support them in doing that. This idea of a community land trust, it's a system. Now, it is a system built around the idea of the community land trust, the conventional community land trust model of being able to provide affordable housing. And what they do is they basically purchase the land, and the improvements is what they call it in real estate, and the improvements on top of the land, which is the building and the driveway or whatever, that is purchased by the person. But of course, that is only owned due to a special relationship that you have or special stipulations that you follow from the community land trust. Those special stipulations are where I am branching out from the conventional model. Okay, so what you see here is this becomes a small business catalyst. This becomes a place where social networks and third spaces are, basically preserved and strengthened. Religious groups and spiritual gatherings, of course. Farms, gardens, nature, that expansion there. Okay. And I'll dig into these a little bit in this actual presentation. So, art, local art. I'll try not to go off the rails on explaining that, but independent organization or guild incubator, okay, which really does touch on the idea of what we were talking about earlier, connecting passionate people to change the world. But also innovative education, this idea of just the initiatives and the support network for innovating in education, period. So this idea of innovative housing is, it's you know, like I keep like I the innovative housing or the affordable housing is the conventional model. The innovative housing is where we kind of start to branch out. So I kind of misspoke a little bit on the second slide. But the idea here is that when we're talking about housing and available housing, it is we have I spent a lot of time in in the building industry as I wore a few different hats as a supplier, but also on the design side mainly, but also in the seat of a supplier and in the seat of an actual contractor and an inspector. The people who have the money and who are building are not creative. They are not creative, right? And I say this, and this is a blanket statement. There are going to be people that obviously deviate from this, blanket statement, of course. But the idea here is that the people who have the money, they are not creative. They don't care about what they put up on land. A lot of the times, what you'll find is, not even just in the building industry, in a lot of these industries, is they have the only qualification that a lot of these leaders have is they know how to work an Excel sheet. They know, they're really good at finance. And what you'll find, and this is led me to some very disastrous developments that I've actually, literally had my hand in developing and seeing, or not developing, but actually designing and seeing in terms of just particular places that were just disasters. But when we talk about innovative housing, we're talking about housing that actually fits the community, and it fits the community aesthetically. It fits the community as more than just simply it's something that provides financial support to the owners, or more tax revenue for the city, which a lot of these places will do, or a lot of this system will definitely do a lot of that. But when it comes down to innovative housing, commercial renovations, we're talking about, for instance, where can we put people in places that actually help and fit into this model that is the actual neighborhood in the city, right? So if we're talking about a cafe with a huge attic or something, or attic storage, and what can we do there to where we put the right people there? So say, for instance, we have a guy who's really passionate about coffee. That's a place where he can go. He can actually help in that business in a certain different way, but I'm going to go off the rails if I keep talking about it. But the idea here is that you can put and manipulate space in such a way, when you understand kind of a lot of what goes into it, in terms of a lot of the practices that go into it. Like I said, I was a consultant or a designer for a long time, so I understand kind of the engineering concepts and stuff like that, but I also understand working with the city, what it takes in terms of the limitations of building improvements and stuff like that as well, and what we're adding onto a building, how that needs to be communicated to the city, stuff like that. So this is like a just standard skill set, this is kind of where I shine in terms of housing in general, right? Innovative housing is kind of that where it bridges into the creative aspect of what I can provide in terms of a city. This whole list is a rabbit hole. It is such a rabbit hole for me. I'm gonna ignore it. I'm really gonna just ignore it. But the idea here is, I think this is important. This is definitely important enough to mention. I was interviewing this one guy who was working in housing or working for a big developer or something, and he said, "Hey, he's looking at kind of a plan that I have for, of course, it was the Foundry, but not the community land trust model. But he was looking at it, and he was saying like, well, all this sounds really pie in the sky, but when it comes down to the NIMBY community, I didn't even know what the word meant at that point, but he said when it comes down to the NIMBY community, this is why a lot of these what they call high density housing, this is why the stuff doesn't get done, because the community gets together and they find reasons to say no." And I'll be honest with you, I'm very spiteful, so when I hear that, I'm like, okay, great. When we create something that's wonderful and beautiful and they're staring at it from the outside, I'm picturing that meme of like SpongeBob like looking at Patrick and or was it Squidward looking at like Patrick and SpongeBob outside having fun. And that's what I want them to be like. I want them to be Squidward. And I want them to be like people like in terms of basically turning it's a way to where like it kind of got me really thinking about how to appeal to these people in such a way. But that's really the driving, that was the kind of the driving toxic factor of really how I learned to appeal to these these particular communities. But the idea here is that we won't go down the rabbit hole of how exactly, but if you've ever heard of, I'll give you a taste, book-themed neighborhoods, basically, where they have like things like, instead of like, we all see bus stops, but the idea here is that rather than bus stops, you have like reading niches. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right, but basically just like little book hubs and stuff like that, rather than the actual seating, and you have entire neighborhoods kind of built like that. But that's just one. That's just one. I'm totally biting my tongue at the rest of it, but yeah, that's one way. A huge part of it is appealing to the NIMBY community, though. The next one we're talking about the small business catalyst, and this idea of like small business catalyst. The reason why it's a catalyst, right? A catalyst, for those that don't know, is basically like where like a reaction becomes a lot easier to take place, right? So this is like biology talk, like science talk, or whatever. And I'm a geek, yeah, whatever. But the idea here is like small business catalyst. You get like these ideas of like people who come together. Say for instance, like we all know that one person who just knows how to cook, and they just like really go off the rails. And you're like, hey, you should start a business, and you realize like, if that person starts a business, usually you just don't realize like, oh, you just know how to cook. You don't know how to like actually run a business type thing. Like you realize like, oh, I just set you up for failure like by trying to advise you that way. But the idea here is that we want to give people those opportunities to come up, right? Because when you have a whole bunch of local people who are passionate about their particular pieces and their particular things, and you can start to connect them, and you can create the right systems that will make those catalysts really just come up naturally, even with the connections alone. But the innovative aspect of this housing thing, it comes with, of course, the baseline option, because we don't want to just simply deny people based on them not playing ball with a certain thing. But when they go into the the opt-in we'll say, become full-blown Renaissance people, and they're identified by their community as Renaissance people, a lot of that that's going to expand their valuable housing. That means that basically they've proven that they're willing to develop themselves based on whatever passions, get in groups that they really care about, and whatever kind of social groups or spiritual groups or whatever, but they're able to just get in those groups, whether there's like video game interest, anything like that, artistry, poets, whatever. They get in a social group and they meet regularly. And also their stewardships, and they also cover the role of being stewards of their particular land in some way, shape, or form. Okay. And there's various ways to cover all of these particular, any of these three basics, right? But it's called, you can remember it as kind of the three S's. So you got self-development, social connections, and then the stewardship, right? So where you're actually, stewardship is basically where you're watching over your land and basically just improving upon, you're finding ways to improve upon your land or improve upon your community. But big parts of this is going to be is when you opt in, you are making, you are giving credits to your particular housing based on the support you have for small businesses. So say for instance that I visit this, cafe every every month or week or whatever, or every, week, or basically you have this particular quota that you fulfill in terms of your needs or the percentage of money that you spend in the community and how much of that is spent in small businesses. And that idea, that concept itself, it becomes kind of a self-propagating network that expands outward. And this is very important. A lot of things that go into that, but that's kind of the gist of it. So there's going to be very real incentive to support small businesses, and not only just support them. Like, you don't have to go. Like, if the business is, let's say for instance the restaurant is really not good, and you're telling them like, hey, this stuff isn't good. You're giving them real reviews. When you show them that you're giving them real reviews, then that's also a check mark, right? Because you're giving them real, very valuable feedback, and that's also something. So we're not just trying to simply just hand out participation trophies to everyone. You have to refine your business and prove that you're able and willing to refine your business. Because I do believe in competition, but we just don't have it now. We just. We definitely missed the mark there. But that idea here is when you have that within a small community, you're going to see a lot more creative businesses come out and come about, right? And even the STEM companies, right? Those little small technology companies or whatever, right? Because AI doesn't necessarily have to be, a conglomerate. It can be, like, there's communities that basically donate data to improve their particular AI systems to do certain things. And there's also some opportunity that I see there, but that's another rabbit hole. But the idea here is that it's a small bit, it's a catalyst. Okay, and I'm not misspeaking when I say that word, catalyst, in terms of what I'm envisioning. Another thing, of course, is these social networks, right? Churches, spiritual gatherings. This term coexistence, I think it's gotten kind of a more like, oh, this is like bright and sunny and futuristic, bright and sunny, and we're so nice. And no, it's coexistence because it's actually the best model in terms of producing the most creative and the most intelligent individuals. Okay, when you have true coexistence. Okay, so that idea of churches and spiritual gatherings, we shouldn't have like, people out, Christians out here trying to be alpha male, trying to out alpha other religions. It's honestly ridiculous, but that's one particular social network, but the idea here is that that's one particular piece. Another thing is like sober night outings. One thing I don't have in this particular presentation is that I want there to always be a 24/7 businesses, or a business, or at least one business that's always open and available to everyone 24/7 when they want to come in and connect, and or just work on something. Creatives don't work 9 to 5. If you want a creative city, if you want a more innovative city, you shouldn't force people to operate in this particular timeline. You should make it to where all of these people are able to do whenever they want to do, whenever they feel inspired to do. But that's kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit. Idea of also open mics, of course, like poetry, music, whatever. Library support. Libraries are a great resource, but they have a tremendous bit of opportunity. But I will say they have not capitalized on that opportunity to how they could expand and really been utilized for what they could be utilized for. And I have a lot of hope for libraries, because it's we'll just say it's a lot of potential there. Maker spaces, right? Like things like 3D art, like 3D modeling, stuff like that. A lot of cool stuff there. Clubs, sports, and activities. Of course, you got things like of course, basketball, football, but also like combat sports. Activity sports like climbing, stuff like that. When we talk about these particular things, we are incentivized. When we talk about that 3 S's from earlier, this is going to involve a lot of that, right? So when you talk about checking that mark, right, you're saying I'm satisfying the social aspect of the S. You're going to be picking from some of these in certain ways, in a lot of cases. Now, of course, we're talking about connecting people in the physical world, and it's very important to me. The idea here of farm, garden, nature, and that expansion. A lot to not trip over here that I'm going to try to put out, and I sent out a few emails, but I haven't quite gauged support from the small or from the local farms yet. I put out a few emails to some organizers for local farms. I haven't contacted local farms in general, particularly in around Kansas City is where I'm at now, but definitely a lot of potential here, but local food initiatives and incentives, the same things with the local businesses, the way you kind of have that network of alternate options that are available to you. You'll have the same thing with the local food incentives, right? So say, for instance, there's a local business that's attached to the local farms. You'll get even more points or more credit for shopping at those particular grocery stores, right, that support the local farms, things like that. Okay. Also, this idea of community food, forests, gardens, whatever. We start growing and creating new concepts and ideas around where food can grow, how food grows, things like that. We'll start seeing more and more of this in terms of what can be done in the community. And when you have people that come together and they're just passionate about things like gardening and stuff like that, we'll have natural support for these particular initiatives in a way. Also, of course, clean water initiatives, things like that. And you can read this, but we gotta really come to an understanding about this whole thing about farm, garden, nature expansion. It's not the climate change debate right now is not what I'm talking about. It's not centered around the climate change debate. Okay, uh, it's a very simple thing. Your grandfather used to go fishing. Why can't I go? Why can't I find fish in my local streams? Why can't I find fish in my local, in my local rivers? Your grandfather used to do this. I don't understand. There is no debate. That's just how it is, right? Uh, my child will be hospitalized if they choose to drink from any surface level water or a large, vast amounts of surface level water in the city. Why is that? Should that be the case? Are you saying that that should, in fact, be the case? I got a feeling that you'll find a lot more understanding and support for a lot of initiatives around cleaning the environment when you frame it quite like this, rather than saying, oh, these CO2 gases, I don't see CO2. I don't know what CO2 is if I'm a regular average Joe. What are you talking about? Right? But when you say, hey, you tried to go fishing, you realize you can't go fishing? Okay, so do you realize that they're poisoning the river? Like, it's kind of crazy, right? That they're allowed to do that? I mean, it's it's crazy. I'm not gonna go down the rabbit hole there, but we find these mutual understandings and we go after these things and we expand on these things, and eventually we'll come to some very, I think, unique understanding and support. Some unique expanding and initiatives regarding just nature in general, right? Another thing, art production. Like I said, I'm gonna try not to trip over rabbit holes, but we're talking about art produced locally. We need that. We need that. The idea here, in terms of this particular concept, creating a middle class artist. Okay, that is the goal. Okay, when I say, like, when some kid says, he's in high school and he wants to say, hey, look, mom, I'm really trying to be an artist. She's not going to look at him and say, hey, well, I mean, how are you going to pay the bills? He's going to be like, okay, cool. Are you working hard towards that? Do you think that that's really something that you really want? Well, cool. Well, let's keep going after that. Well, if that's really what you want. The idea of there not being a local or a middle, just an artist in general, in terms of a middle, just a middle class artist and a demographic for middle class artistry, I think is a crime. It's a very severe crime, and we want to make that achievable, and we'll do a lot of things to basically support that system, and we'll utilize that system in very special ways to do that. And that includes basically this idea of when a community, with a community land trust in general, they don't just worry about housing, they also kind of help, alleviate the burdens off of businesses. So say, for instance, we alleviate the burdens off of a few businesses in the area. Now they only, let's say they only play local musicians. They only, or the bookstores, they actually have, once a week, they have zine fairs, right? Well, these are initiatives that are linked to this idea of the community land trust and that community land trust model, and that system that we're talking about here in terms of innovating to systemize this idea of supporting communities supporting each other. Another thing, of course, is the independent organizations and the guilds, and this incubator. We have, like I said, a lot to do. When it comes down to independent organizations, and this incubator, this idea. We have a lot of people, and like I said at the top of this, I was passionate. I was a passionate young kid who couldn't find a way, an outlet for that passion to try to change the world. And we have passionate adults that go through the same exact thing, right? They can't connect to people. And I just remember this one thing where, this one scenario where I was in a park, and there was like this community of bird watchers or whatever. They were around the park, and I was caught in a situation where I was eavesdropping. These guys, they were just watching the birds, and there was I remember this one passionate girl was talking, and she was like, she said something about solar energy. She was like, man, things don't have to be like this and this and that, and and she was with her, I could tell she was with kind of a group of familiars or a group of friends that she came there with, and I just remember that particular moment, there being a very real silence around that girl when she said that. And it was just the friends around her, you could tell that the friends around her were having conversations. They were saying like, hey, look, maybe she'll just like shut up about, these particular things if we don't address it. And that right there, I'll say it hurt, because it was just like, I know how that feels, but, and I mean, people like that need outlets, right? And that's when you get real change in the world, when they have people that they genuinely connect to, not, they have people that they genuinely, like, that girl wouldn't even have to talk to, I mean, she might not even be around these guys if she found the right people, you know what I'm saying? Like, that right there, that idea of connecting the right people to really change the world, we have never seen that type of potential. People think that people have this kind of thing like, hey man, we're like always tired, and it's just like, no. You're just never passionate. It's a tremendous difference. When you're passionate about anything, time doesn't even exist. You stop worrying about time, right? And when they have a world that they really want to, or a lifestyle that they just want to take place in, it's no longer work. Something else completely. So when we talk about these independent organizations and these incubators, when we talk about a renaissance that shadows all others, this is what I'm talking about here, right? The support systems for these people to come together and do what they want to do. Genuinely what they want to do. You guys haven't seen passionate people working together in a room. You've seen business meetings where people in clown suits or, business suits, they come in and they say, oh, this is what we need to do for the company, so our owner can buy a bigger yacht to impress his friends. Great, good job. There's no, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, like, when this actually starts, there's not gonna be competition. It's just not going to exist. There's literally, it does not exist. In a world where people have the option to get in and be passionate and do what they want to do, they can live, they don't have to scramble to survive, and they're just worried about actually changing the world. Yeah, the world looks a lot different. And like I said, a renaissance that shadows others. This isn't just good advertisement by Sleepy. This is literally how it is. This is just how things are going to be. Okay? This idea of and people don't understand. Like, the society's sick, right? And we have to change things. Who changes things? We do, right? That's what you guys have to understand. Like, there is no, when it comes down to intelligence in the community and how it exists today, people have never had more access to the information that they have now. They've never had more access to it. You are able to do so much. So when you create this particular system, this particular mode for, people to actually feel and develop and do what they want to do with the people they want to connect with, that's it. There is no, like I said, there is no competition. These businesses, they're gonna have to do something. I don't know if, like, I would say maybe McDonald's is hiring, and I'm like, yo, McDonald's is gonna be out of business. Wait a second. No, I don't mean that. I don't want to get like Target on my back from Ronald McDonald. I remember like the places who don't have war in the world, they all have McDonald's or something like that. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. But let me chill. But that's the idea here is the independent organization incubator. You create spaces and you incentivize these spaces to hold and support these stewardship groups. And like I said, when you with the community land trust models, they'll have different incentives based on where and what they do and stuff like that. So that's the idea. And we'll get into this with the next one. Innovative education, and we'll start off with this idea of open source expansion, stuff like that. God, I can't fall down the rabbit hole, but I'm gonna try not to. Our internet started as open source, right? The people with the suits, they came in and they just, they didn't know what they were looking at. They just knew that people were interested so they could make money, right? That's what they knew, and they ruined it. They absolutely ruined it in terms of that actual. The Friendly Orange Glow is a great book to read if you're really interested in how the internet started. Really just how the precursor for a lot of the companies that you hear today. Okay? But we need to understand that people today, we are not resourceful with anything. We're not effective with our resources in any case whatsoever. Okay? So when we talk about what we can do with what we have, we haven't even explored that option, right? We're trying to, like, you got people, like, in business suits trying to find ways to make more money so their investors can get bigger boats, but there is no real efficiency. When we talk about tremendous change that can occur, DeepSeek is a great model. 2 magnitudes of order less of the actual resources invested. That Chinese model, for those who don't know AI, like you got what we have now, OpenAI or whatever we have here. We have all of our platforms, but in China they created DeepSeek with 2 orders of magnitude less. People don't understand what we can do with so much less. Like, people need to really, really get that to their head. We don't have to have a lot to make to completely outshine who's competitive, who's our whoever we view as a competitor today. I'll say, okay. I'm sorry if I speak in that term and it's toxic or something, but I that's kind of how I think when I think about like the food companies who are just like completely poisoning everybody. I'm just thinking like, all right, we gotta get these guys out the way. I'm thinking about competition, not just trying to shame them out of existence or whatever. But the idea here is that we can do better, And it is very much easier. People actually do want better, better quality things. And they don't necessarily, like, it's crazy to me. But but that concept, I think I started with was it the friendly orange glow, that idea of, it started with education, the internet. Right, it did start with education, right? How can we educate? They tried to really gain more efficiency with the education, and that's how things started. But they grew past that, and eventually it became something to where, like, education just became fun. It was just like, hey, can I work on the thing? Kids were trying to stay all weekend at the computer lab. It was like, this is that's genuine education. That's what I imagine is real education in my eyes. I think, like, when you have kids that want to actually take part in that, then that'd be genuine education, where you see real things happening. Purpose-centered curriculum, things like, for instance, like, we don't necessarily have a track for, let me see, like, we don't have a track for biology, we'll say, for, studying of plant life. You have a track record for, you can create a curriculum around expanding plant life in general and stuff like that, so you'll get into an understanding of, okay, these are the particular classes that I would want to take, and start forming and creating your own, and expanding and moving into mentorships regarding, these are the guilds that I need to be in contact with, and stuff like that. But this is change. This is real change, because when we talk about this idea of education, we have something called compulsory education, which is required, quote-unquote, education, right? And this is really K through 12 for Americans. And that right there, that K through 12 period, when you graduate and you receive a certificate of graduation, a more powerful understanding of that whole system of compulsory education, that's standardization of your citizens. That's what that is, right? If people basically drop out, then the idea is, hey, they haven't received the stamp of standardization for our citizenship that we really normally would recommend. We failed. Okay, we've been failing for a very long time. Okay, we've been trying to produce workers rather than people who are actually passionate, want to change the world and do things. We have been producing people who want to find companies that trade money for time. That's what we've been doing. We've been trying to create people who want to, or who are able to, take instructions and follow very deliberate instructions. Even with this whole model right here of this community land trust, I'll say this. I've been to a lot of different people about this idea about various different ideas around the Foundry in general. And I'll tell you this, a lot of these guys can't think outside of their box. A lot of them. And it is sad. It is very sad. And it's no mark against them, it's just the system. But it is a failure regardless, I'll say that. Future generations aren't going to look back at, they're not going to look back at them as standing any separate from anybody else right now. Because they could not think outside of the box that was created for them. And that's the sad part. You go to these people who have stated initiatives of things like, I want affordable housing, I want to, feed more people and stuff like that. And you go to them with initiatives and you're just like, oh no, we just do this. I'm not sure what you want. And you just like listen to them and you're just like, I mean, it's crazy, right? Because I just listen to these people and I'm just thinking to myself, like, I guess this is kind of, I mean, this is why the world looks the way it does. This is why when I was a kid I couldn't find that passion, you know, that outlet for passion that I had to change the world, is because everybody looks like this. And I am sorry if it sounds like I'm kind of like downing on these people, but it's realistic, and I think a lot of us need a bit of that. And a lot of us need that in terms of really to understand that when you can't think outside of the box, a lot of times you'll miss out on real understanding and potential based on that. Okay, it's a lesson. You need to take this as more of a lesson than me kind of just railing against them. But that's another thing when it comes down to education. You want people who are able to follow their passion and be able to and literally be excited about trying, like literally like that Friendly Orange Glow, that thing where it's just like, hey, like there was a moment to where like, or there was a particular situation where somebody like mentioned like trying to hide in the back room for the weekend, right? And they opened the door and they realized like there was 2 kids already in there, and they just said and it was just like, oh my goodness, like, oh, okay, cool. It's like, hey, just be quiet. And we'll stay in there. But that was like, it was perfect. That was actually perfect. That was the perfect scenario, right? Things like game development, stuff like that. Like, you put these, like, I'm telling you, like, they'll go off the rails if you put the right systems in front of them, and they'll create, and they will completely outshine us, right? When we talk about innovative education, my ideal for education, when you see those people like in those futuristic movies in the future, right? Those kids that got like, they're like probably like 13 years old, but they have like doctorate level knowledge based on what we have today. We have to step towards that. We can't just like, that doesn't just happen, you know, right? Like you can't have like the people before us, the whole boomer mentality of like, oh well, we struggled, so you guys struggled. Like no, you don't understand. You want to make sure they're strong, but you want to make sure that they also have it to where it's easier for them to get, so they can get even magnitudes further ahead. That's how you're defined that's how I would define you as a particular generation, right? Like how were you as a platform for the next generation? What was your, how did you platform the next generation? And and again, that's not me trying to down the boomers or anything, but I mean, it's real life. It is. It's real life, and it's kind of how we should understand the world in terms of the lessons that we really need to come to. Which brings me to the final slide. Renaissance, like your legacy, depends on it, right? Because you are that hero. Okay. I'm a builder. I'm not a politician. Okay. I want that to be. That's going to be kind of a known thing. I am very. I think politicians should have to go through like various protests and boycotts, because I do feel like the main job for a politician in America today is to pretend like they contribute to civil society. And that is, it's hard, because I know the local politicians are better in terms of they're usually more connected than the federal politicians, right? But you guys really should understand that let's say if we become a space-faring species, if we go to another planet and they have politicians, that's actually a good sign. And the idea here is that they've come to the conclusion that they can't settle their differences with violence, with only violence, right? That's what we would gain from that understanding. When you look at us today, the amount of resources that we spend on war versus how many politicians that we have and the quality of life of our civilization, they're performers in my eyes. And it's very hard for me to kind of even give grace to the local politicians, because I do feel like unless they're protesting the federal politicians and really fighting hard and making good faith effort to do something to fix and make society and repair society, that they should be harshly criticized as well. But you guys should understand that either way, it's not going to be one person that comes in, right? Like, even with, like, I think most people realize, like, Trump he's not even a wet noodle at this point. He's just like a poisonous worm. But when it comes down to, like, people on the left, we're looking at, like, people like Zoran Mamdani coming up, and I think he's, he's what he is. But that idea of one person coming up, one person doesn't solve this, right? One interview that I heard with Trump, I wasn't anti-Trump when Trump came into office and started coming up, actually. But one interview I didn't even hear the whole interview. The interview that he did with Joe Rogan, what really turned me off of Trump was when he said he was in real estate and he was, like, in some kind of development property or something. And he said, hey, like, oh, well, it was something about a body of water or something. Like, he said something like, oh, it was a puddle or something like that. And he was like, and Joe, I fixed it, or something like that. And I was just like, you fixed it? Interesting. You can always tell, like, the quality of a leader by, like, it's just, like, kind of like how they go about just the problem solving that takes place, because he doesn't know anything about, like, bodies of waters and lakes, I'm sure, right? Like, he didn't fix that by himself. Even if he does, he doesn't know much about, like, law. He needed the lawyer or whatever, but there was no mention of the people that took place that were on his team, right? There was none of that was mentioned. It was just like, I was, so amazing. And it was just like, I can't go, like, I can't sit there and, I can't eat that up with a straight face. I can't. So, I mean, that was kind of the moment to where I realized, like, man, I can't even listen to this guy. I mean, hopefully he follows through, which he obviously hasn't. And, I mean, in terms of actually, like, stopping wars and stuff like that, like, but this idea of him going out there and saying, that, I couldn't even listen to the interview, because it was just like, you don't get you'll know a real politician by how much they try to encourage you to get together and create solutions yourself. Okay? That's when I see a real politician. They're not trying to prove their work to you. They're trying to prove your work to yourself. Do you understand? They need that. They need you to understand your work, your value, because they understand that in 4 years I'm not in office, or in 40 years I won't be on this planet. You'll be on this planet, or your children are going to be on that planet, or the culture that we create is going to be what exists. And that right there is something that we really need to come to an understanding of when you're evaluating a politician. That's always a great metric. How much do they encourage you to take agency over your own life? And that's a very good metric, and you're not going to see a lot of that, especially with the federal politicians. With local politicians, there's probably a lot more variety there, depending on the city and the amount of, like, drag load that they come up with, or that they had to kind of accumulate to get to their position. Because, I mean, honestly, they created a system that selects for the worst of the worst to become federal politicians. A lot of times we got to understand that. or the people who are either the worst or the best at pretending to be genuine change. But the idea here is that these guys right now, what we're seeing, the oligarchs in power right now with the Republicans, they have more in common with the corporatists, which are the Democrat political elites, than they do with either one of us. Like anybody in anybody in the lower class, we'll say, right? Because if you're still playing that game, I mean, you're not, and believe me, you're not even accounted when they have to actually make decisions, right? You're not really accounted for it. The only thing they need to account for is how can we make sure that they believe that they're accounted for. But this idea, this culture that we leave behind, that's what's important here. We need to do something about that. And I'm going to leave a link in the description below for anyone that wants to fill out the survey. But the idea is you can donate to this Foundry Community Land Trust, but you don't have to donate money, right? Money is great. Money is nice. But when it comes down to ideas, time, skills, you need to understand, never underestimate yourself, right? Never underestimate what you can do when you're passionate about anything. So I'll say that we're going to end that here, and thank you for listening. And I hope this wasn't too long. I'll look back on it, and I'll have to do the edits and see how long it was, but I hope it wasn't too long. Anyway, have a good rest of your day.
Where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
A big, powerful America, and shoot them for what?
On that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.
With the last words on my lips, that I am a revolutionary. And you're going to have to keep on saying that.